I'm here. All right, so I think the first thing would be to take a roll call. Is that correct?
Yes, we have roll call. And so Kathy Bauer. Kathy, can you unmute?
Good morning. Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
That's okay, Kathy Bauer. Tim Dean.
Here.
Mark Doyle.
He's on mute.
I'm here.
Mark Doyle. Okay.
Yes.
Stacy Langenthal.
Here.
Jamie Picone.
Here.
Don Sagliano.
Here.
Al Torgiani.
Here.
Okay. Thank you. Now, after roll call is conflict of interest disclosures.
Yes, so if anybody has a conflict of interest in any of the items on the agenda, if you could please let us know and state what the conflict is. Does anybody have one? Okay, I finally found the agenda. And this is for the IDA meeting, correct, Sarah?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so the next item on the agenda is a approval of the, well, I'm sorry, Sarah, there was a proof of meeting notice published, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have any minutes that we need to approve? No.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going ahead. Are there any bills and communications that we need to discuss?
No.
Okay. All right, minutes of the last meeting. Does anybody have any amendments or changes or corrections to the minutes from the last meeting? Okay, if not, I would take a motion from somebody to approve the minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay.
All right. Actually, Don and Al, can you say your name first and then make the motion and then second?
Okay,
Don
Al.
Sagliano, I move to accept the minutes of the January 8th, 2020 meeting.
Okay.
Excellent.
Al Gianni seconds that motion.
Thank you, Al. Okay, so we will have to do a roll call vote. Sarah, do you want to call out the names?
Sure. Kathy Bauer.
Approve.
Tim Dean.
Approved.
Mark Doyle.
Yes, approved.
Stacy Langenthal.
Aye.
Jamie Picone.
Approved.
Don Sagliano.
Aye.
Al Torgiani.
Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, the next item of business is a report of the treasurer. Marilyn?
Good morning. You don't have this report as the paper copies were ready to be distributed this morning. So I'm going to email it to you right after the meeting. Since we don't need to accept it, it's not an issue, I'm just reporting. So let me go over the balance sheet for you. We currently have $3.4 million. That's more cash than we generally have because those that amount includes the pilot payments that came in. All of the pilot payments came in on time and in full. They already went out the first week in March. So they're still showing up on our balance sheet for February 29th, but the next week they are gone. Our accounts payable is at $189,000 for the IDA. $150,000 of that is due to the LDC, and we have the audit that is also due from that amount. There is nothing else on the balance sheet unusual. On the P&L, again, the only thing that's showing up that's interesting are the pilots. They came in, they went out. We're at a $379,000 net loss, which is exactly where we're budgeted for. We're budgeted for a $394,000 loss. So at the moment, does anyone have any questions?
And you'll send out the,
As
you'll-
soon as we get off this
yeah.
call, I'll send out the,
Okay, there's no approval necessary. That was just the report, correct?
yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. We also have on the agenda, let's see, finance and audit. Discussion and approval of the 2019 audit. Are we prepared to do that today?
Yes. So
Okay.
I would, Kathy,
Yes.
would you like to give the report?
Yep. The Finance Committee met with our accountants, RBT, CPAs, with Linda Hannigan, and she went through the audit with us. There was no significant findings or unusual transactions. She said the management and staff of the agency was very forthcoming. Everything that they requested, they received. She didn't see any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies with the agency. For the IDA, one note that we asked her to clarify and put into the audit was the IBM did not execute the lease agreement, and as we had anticipated and as they had first indicated, which is shown in the numbers between the 2018 total net position and the 2019 net position going down $1,678,000. And that she also noted in the report that in May of 2019, the conduit debt obligation law was approved and is supposed to go into effect on December 31st of 2021, and we are already doing that, so 2 years in advance.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about that report? There was a copy of a draft in our packets, is that correct?
Yes.
I'd like to make one comment. The audit went very smoothly. They were only here for at the office for 1 day.
Mhm.
But this is the 3rd year of our 3-year contract. So we will be putting this out to bid in the fall.
Okay. When we do that, are we required that we change firms, or if the current firm is competitively, the competitive bidder, are we allowed to use the same firm?
Yes.
Okay. That's not because I had any opinion on it. I was just curious. Okay. Do we need to have we need to have an approval of the audit, right?
Correct.
Okay. So if I could ask for someone to wave their hand that's willing to make a motion to approve the audit.
I'll move to approve the audit as stated.
Okay.
Oh, Mark, if you could state your name and then make the motion.
I did in reverse. This is Mark Doyle. I'll move to approve the motion as stated in the draft audit report.
Don Sagliano, I second.
Thank you, Don. Okay, Sarah, I'll ask you to take a roll call vote.
Sure. Kathy Bauer,
Aye.
Tim Dean,
Yes.
Mark Doyle,
Yes.
Stacy Langenthal,
Aye.
Jamie Picone,
Yes.
Don Sagliano,
Yes.
Al Torgiani.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is unfinished business. Sarah, is there any unfinished business?
No.
Okay, that allows us to move on to new business, and that brings us to consideration and approval of a preliminary resolution for 2328 Creek Drive LLC, City of Beacon, to induce a project providing for a mortgage tax exemption, sales tax exemption, and a payment in lieu of taxes for an approximately $8,700,000 project for construction and redevelopment at 23 to 28 Creek Drive. the former City of Beacon Public Works Garage, to construct a mixed-use project consisting of 15,000 square feet of residences and 20,000 square feet of commercial space. So, Sarah, how would you like to kick this off?
So I'll give a brief description and then I'll hand it off. We have with us joining us this morning representatives of the applicant as well as their tenant, and I'll have them announce themselves after I make my presentation.
Thank you.
So as Tim said, this project is for 2328 Creek Drive. It is currently city-owned property. The applicant proposes, excuse me, to build a mixed-use building on the site. It was identified by the City of Beacon as the project developer to build according to the RFP they had issued back in 2016. The applicant is going to be using Silver LEED building standards to build the building, as well as create public space and extend the Greenway Trail along Fishkill Creek. The applicant has also identified a tenant. This tenant is a software development company that plans to bring approximately 63 of their current employees, as well as expand for to an additional 87 after 2 years of project completion. So with that, I'm gonna turn that over to, we have Tina here joining us. And Tina, if you could just introduce yourself, state your full name, and talk a little about the project.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tina Anders-Landolfi, and I'm VP of Operations. So, and mostly handling this application.
And then also just state for the record is that the applicant is coming for our standard pilot formula, as well as sales and mortgage tax exemptions.
Yes, that is correct.
So is there any questions for the applicant? We also have Tina or Thomas or Paul. I don't know if you want to introduce yourselves.
Sure. My name is Thomas Schneck. I'm one of the co-founders and have been co-president of Docware for 30 years. And yeah, have been involved for about 2.5 years in our site search for a new location, for a new headquarters for our US operations, and more than happy today to answer any questions. Thank you.
And this is Paul Remington. I'm the Chief Financial Officer and Head of HR in New Windsor. Overall, I've been with the company for about 16 years and have worked very closely with Thomas over the last couple of years, also looking for a new location for our corporate office.
And then Ian, would you like to?
Sure. Ian Nicholson, partner with the law firm of Fetty and Fader, and we represent the applicant.
Oh.
Great. So Sarah, as far as any information or comments from municipalities involved with this project, can you comment on those?
Yes, so the city is supportive of the project. Again, it is in response to an RFP, and they have been identified as the developer. So the City of Beacon is in support of the project, and I believe the school district as well, because Docware has been having conversations with the school district. And so the school district is in support of this project. Just informally, the school district, because they hadn't had to seek formal approval from the school district because they are coming for our standard UTEP, and we don't require that for our standard UTEP. But from my understanding, the school district is supportive.
Okay, and this is a preliminary approval, correct?
Correct.
So the next steps after it is, if we approve this, the next steps, could you just remind everybody what those would be?
So the preliminary approval allows the IDA to call for a public hearing. The next step would be to schedule a public hearing, and then they would come back to the board for the final approval.
Okay. So does anybody have specific questions about this project right now?
Looks like Mark.
Yes, I wonder if you could let us know what stage you're at, whether you have obtained the parcel yet, or exactly what the situation is currently.
Okay, so currently we're in contract with the City of Beacon. Part of that contract was that we obtain all of our approvals before the sale becomes final. Now that we have our approvals, we're now waiting on the Department of Health to sign off on the project. Once that happens, we can then file and close on the property.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is the plan for the local labor policy going to be utilized on this? Because it seems like it's just under the threshold of 10 million.
That was, just for the record, that was Al Turgiano asking that question, board member.
So because they're under the 10 million, which is our threshold, they will not be subject to the local labor policy, local workforce policy.
Have we seen I haven't seen the documentation showing what the constructability or what type of construction it is to be able to be at 8.7 million for the amount of work that seems to be going on there. That's why I asked that question.
So sure. So Tina, if you wanted to.
Well, so basically the 8.7 million or whatever it is all of the costs. That's land acquisition, that's all of our approvals, and then the construction on that. This is going to be a steel concrete class A with silver lead equivalent standards. So the construction, we basically went with the standard of, I believe, the 49,000 square footage of the building, and we're coming up with our numbers, and that's where we're at. The hard cost is approximately around 6.5 or 6.6 million, I believe. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm kind of limited with everything I have right now. If that
prior to final approval, will we be able to have access to see what your construction cost may turn out to be, or estimated values?
Well, we're working with what we have, so we don't have a full set of architectural plans yet out. And it's hard for us to put exact numbers in because we have to put those kind of things out to bid. We do have estimates, and just from past experience and everything else that we kind of accumulate throughout development on our other properties is where we're coming in with these numbers, and we're pretty confident with those numbers at per square foot.
Any other further follow-up questions, Al?
No, we'll keep going. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions about this project?
Tim, this is Don Sagliano. I have extensive questions regarding this project. I don't believe at this time that this project is ready for tentative approval. The representatives of the company are speaking ambiguous, not able to qualify harder construction type costs. I think there's the fact that we're in a crisis situation here in New York State. I don't feel that we can give our full and fair evaluation of the project, even if it's only for tentative. Again, that's my feeling, and that's how I will be voting. Thank you.
Sure. Don, do you have some specific questions that you would like to have answered?
Tim, unfortunately, I'm kind of limited with my IT capability. As you know, that I had extended several questions that I shared among the board members, and further questions that I shared with yourself and Sarah late Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that there's not enough information available for me to make an informed decision.
Okay, so
I can't I'm sorry, excuse me. This is
Yeah.
Don Sagliano again. I can't recall the questions. I'm down to one screen here. Perhaps if I'm able to get into my cell phone here, I might be able to locate them. So if you want to, if anybody else has any commentary or questions, et cetera, they can move and maybe I can call those back up. So,
Yeah, I think it would be important to the applicant, either now or at some point, that they be given the opportunity to be aware of your questions and concerns so that they can provide answers. Whether those answers are to your satisfaction or not, that would be determined. But I think it's important that they know what your questions and concerns are, because otherwise, they can't answer them. Sarah?
Tim, I do have it on my screen if you actually want to hear them.
Sure, I think that would be helpful.
This was from Don, and I don't know the date, like he said, but thank you for the resolutions. Information on a proposed required. The 49,000 square foot is allocated to commercial 18,007 and residential 15,744. What is the balance of approximately 15,000 square feet compromised of? That's question number one.
Okay. Thomas, or is somebody on the line that could?
Tina would be able to answer that.
Okay.
Sure. So the breakdown is, out of that, we have the 49,000 square feet plus or minus of square feet, and that's measured using interior dimensions. The commercial space is a minimum of 18,700 and the residential 15,744. Again, these are plus or minus numbers. We don't have a solid set of architectural plans before us yet. So if you take the remainder, 14,566 square feet, that is allocated to the parking garage, which is 12,243 square feet. It's an underground parking garage that will be placed in. And then the remaining area, hallways, stairwells, bulkheads, and vegetables, is approximately 2,687, which gives you the total of the 49,000 plus or minus. So it looks like what the confusion was is that you only took the commercial space, rentals commercial space, and the residential space, and added those two numbers together.
Thank you. Okay.
Next. You want to go to next?
Unless there's questions from anybody about Tina's answer to the first one. Okay, number two.
Please provide the schedule of phase out of the real estate tax exemption as proposed. That's something they could provide, I guess.
So yes, so that's something that I do. And there was the pilot schedule attached to the reply, my analysis. So it was based on a assessment provided by the City of Beacon that once this building is complete, the property value would be about 6.9 million.
Okay, probably the same will also provide estimate annual real property tax based upon the full build out of the buildings, improvements, and the land.
Yeah, so it's also included in that analysis.
Has the applicant or proposed tenant prepared a 3-year projection for the additional expected employment over the base 87 jobs that will be relocated from Orange County and Danbury?
So
Paul can talk to that.
There's no, we have no jobs in Danbury. Currently, we have 90 employees for DocuWare Corporation, of which 66 are located in New Windsor, New York. And between now and in 2 years, we're expecting to add another 24 positions. 18 of those are looking to be in the professional services, and 9 are being in professional services, 9 in support. And so those two departments basically make up, they support our end users on issues with the product, and then professional services does the installation of the product throughout the country and throughout the Americas. And then we're expecting another 8 to be in operations, which would be finance, HR, and inside sales.
Okay, and those will be located in the new building? Is that the plan?
That's correct.
Okay, so so you have 66 in New Windsor now, and you're hoping to get that up to
90.
Okay. All right.
Okay, lastly, I think it's 8 residential units appear to have a projected $3,000 a month rental. How does that compare with the current rentals in the city?
I'm sorry, a part of that skipped out.
Okay, the 8 residential units appear to have a projected $3,000 a month rental. How does that compare with the current rentals in the city?
So the way that I determined the rent is I took the market rate rents in comparable buildings surrounding the area. I did an average, and that's how I came up per square foot rental on the pro forma. That's what I used. Assuming we would get that. I mean, you never know. It's just a pro forma. It's an estimate. Again, that pro forma did not provide any kind of contingencies, meaning like if we had vacant units for a period of time, if we ever did lose our commercial tenant, things like that.
So can you give me an idea, or give us an idea of the different size units that you have in there?
Right, so we have anywhere from, I believe our smallest unit is estimated to be about 1,250 square feet. And the largest, which I believe we obtained the variance for, of 2 units being allowed to consist of 2,750. Again, once we come up with the final layout, some of those could be a little bit smaller, but we can't exceed the 2,750 regardless.
Don Sagliani, you had a question.
Yes, I did, Tim. Perhaps counsel to the IDA can speak to the fact that these jobs are relocating from one county within New York to an adjoining county in New York. If there's any limitation with regards to New York State, Empire State Development, and job piracy.
Yeah, this is Don Capolino. The 862 paragraph 1 of the municipal law makes it clear that that the agency, the anti-piracy provision of the statute say that the agency is not supposed to be trying to take jobs from another part of the state into Dutch County, providing those benefits. But there are 2 exceptions. The one exception is that the project is reasonably necessary to discourage the project from moving to, from removing such plant or facility to a location outside the state. Or secondly, is reasonably necessary to preserve the competitive position of the project occupant in its respective industry. So it's really one of those 2 exceptions needs to be made clear, and before the board can issue final approval, the board needs to be satisfied that that is what's going on here. I mean, we've just heard, and we have to prove it to the satisfaction of the agency, but we've heard that they've been on the company DocuWare has been on a search for several years, and in the area, in both Orange County and Dutchess County, and that this was the best that they could do within their budget. This is the one that worked, and they're claiming it's reasonably necessary to maintain its competitive position. So that's up to the applicant to prove, and the board to be satisfied.
And this is Eon Nichols from Cutting Fair. Don, thank you for that. I would also like to add, I think in its 2-year search, the applicant was also considering moving out of state as well in New Jersey. And not the applicant, I'm sorry, the tenant. And I think DocuWare can speak to that if I'm incorrect on that.
Yeah, maybe if you don't mind, this is Thomas, I just give you maybe a little bit of a history of our search and provide a little bit more background. How we ended up here. So Docware, as you know, is a software company, and if you're in the software business, the biggest asset you really have as a company are your people. It's all really a war for talent. You know, that's the most important for any software company, and we obviously part of that exercise. Now, we have had a really good run in Orange County for over 20 years. We are currently located in the Windsor at the airport. And the current building we're in is just too small. We expanding, as Paul pointed out, to close to 100 people, probably even more in the next couple of years. And so when we looked at our current location, we were just not able to fit all the people in there. So we started to look for a new location mid-2017. And first we looked actually in Orange County. We looked at a couple of facilities there, but didn't really find anything. But also what was a big part of our consideration is that we know the next 20, 30 years, most of our people we're going to employ will be millennials. And as you know, millennials many times don't even want to have a car anymore. They're really looking for public transportation. And so we said, okay, if we are moving already, let's look for a location where we have good access to public transportation. And that's obviously what was interesting now to look at Dutchess, because Dutchess has the connection to the Metro North line. So we engaged also with a couple of real estate brokers, and we looked at some locations. We went up to Poughkeepsie. We went obviously also to Beacon and looked at various locations there. But also because we really want to be accessible to as many people as possible, we also said, okay, if we have to move, then we also have to widen our our options to see if there are other ones as well. And so we looked also in New Jersey. Specifically, we had management discussions if we should move to Montvale, New Jersey. As you know, Montvale is a very interesting location for two reasons. One, it has a lot of interesting office buildings, and second, it's connected also with the New Jersey Transit all the way into the city. So those were kind of our parameters when we looked at different ways and locations moving forward. But ultimately, what we did is we focused in on Dutchess and specifically on Beacon for two reasons. One is we said if we move too far away from our New Windsor office, there's a chance that we ultimately lose a lot of people. And secondly, when we looked at Dutchess specifically in Poughkeepsie, at least the locations we looked at in Poughkeepsie, they were too far away from the train stations. Most of the office locations we were shown, at least, were not in a distance reachable by foot or by train, by bus. And so we said, okay, Beacon is ideal, especially with the Beacon Loop, or even in walking distance. And initially, we focused on a location on Beekman Street in Beacon, which was great because it was in walking distance from the train station. This was beginning of 2018, and we negotiated with that developer for almost a year. Ultimately, we had to walk away from this location because they couldn't hold the initial pricing, and then they were just too expensive for us. And that's when we started to engage with Rodney Weber and the team at the beginning of 2019 with a new location, which is also very attractive because now this one is connected with the Beacon Loop. So it really checks all these boxes we were looking for. It's close to our current location. It's reachable by the train. And it's a very reputable company. And so we started to negotiate with Rodney and team beginning of 2019 and had lots of planning meetings with Beacon and a lot of other guys. And so, like Tina said, now we are at a point where we can move forward, which we feel very comfortable with. So that's just the historic background in the last 2.5 years, how we ended up where we are today.
Quick question for Don Capolino. This is Tim Dean. Don, is there the requirement, is that applicable to the owner of the property or to the tenant in regards to, making the two exceptions?
Yeah, I mean, it's the overall part. The important part here is that as far as the owner, the applicant, they are already there in the county, but this is but the project also includes the tenants. That's really, I mean, if there were no tenant of this sort, this project would not be considered by the board. So the point is, it's this project which has to show that it qualifies in order for the board to approve it.
Okay. Other questions?
This is Kathy. I'd be interested in seeing projections as to the multiplying effect with the sales tax, payroll tax, as it pertains to the increase of the 24 FTEs over what's already in Orange County over a 5 to 10 year period, to see what would the increase of the 24 employees would ultimately translate to the county and the state.
Is there any comment on that from the applicant at this moment, or is?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. So attached to, included in the board agenda and as part of my analysis of the project is the cost benefit analysis, which does give the projection of what the sales tax and the impact of the project would be located in Dutchess County. So there is, according to the report, a benefit to cost ratio, and the benefit to the county and the state, but with this project is 156 to 1, so 156 to 1 is the benefit to the cost.
Tim, this is Tim, the board chair, to Tina and Thomas and Paul. I hope I ask for your patience during this process. As you can tell, we're all trying to maneuver through documents that we have in our possession, but that we're normally used to having in front of us, and we're at work having dual screens. So trying to maneuver through this remotely is a new experience for all of us.
No worries. No worries.
Yep, no problem.
No, just maybe sorry, but maybe one aspect also to speak to that, which I don't know if that was included in the calculations, but also maybe important for this question. So we as a software company, we have a very high requirement when it comes to certification and training on our product, especially for our resellers who sell the product in the US and in Latin America. So we have a requirement that everybody needs to come for a certification to our location and be trained there in a week-long training course, which creates about 800 to 1,000 overnights, hotel room requirements. And also these people obviously need to go out for dinner, go shopping. So, I mean, this is beyond those 24 new FTEs who will work there on a permanent basis, but it's also going to be hundreds and hundreds of people who will go there every year to get recertified and spend, again, hotel nights and dinners and lunches in Dutchess. So I just want to add that, which might not even be in the initial FTE calculation.
And then also I want to add is through MC, which is our new data workforce employee database analytics program, I did a quick calculation and ran the numbers through that, and jobs, I'm sorry, I can't think of the word, but the ripple effect of these jobs in the county is estimated at 1.63, which means that there is an expected about 55 new jobs created as a result of these jobs moving to Dutchess County.
A question: with the head count that you're looking at for the square feet that you have there, is that enough space for that type of employee count? It looks like averages about, if you take the square feet and you divide it by 87 employees, that's around 215 square foot per person. But does that include in that, copy room, other areas? So it seems like a tight amount of space.
Well, we follow obviously a lot of these modern office designs, which means an open floor plan. So we're moving away from typical offices throughout the two floors. We also obviously highly digitized. So typical room we would normally need for a filing cabinet or for archiving or anything like that. That's obviously not necessary moving forward. So we feel we at least can have those numbers housed in those two floors. So we talked to our architect already. We have an interior architect, and he feels also very comfortable that we can house those amount of people.
Okay.
I would have a follow-up question on that, and that is, this is Mark Doyle. If hopefully you would come to the point of needing to expand, would you be able to expand in the same building by taking over the residential portions, or what would the plan be in that case?
I think Rodney can probably talk a little bit more about this, but what we talked high level about, that there are some ways to be kind of in close vicinity to that new building. I don't think we could expand in the same building, but the idea would be to have buildings which are almost in walking distance to this one we're proposing right now or talking about right now, which would be absolutely okay for us. It would almost give us some sort of a campus feeling, which I guess is also very, very common these days, especially for larger companies. So we were satisfied with that perspective that, down the road, there might be adjacent buildings we could utilize as well.
Is there other questions?
Maybe one aspect I want to just maybe add what Sarah said early on. We had really tremendous conversations with the complete Beacon School District, with the superintendent, with the high school principal. So we have a long tradition in our company to really grow a lot of roots in the community. And we're talking about specifically digital literacy programs we want to get started on, as we really feel this is super important for the next generation, those people behind me here, that they start to learn how to code, and they learn really to feel comfortable with this digital transformation. And we have a high passion as DocuWare to support especially schools with that. And so this has been a really very welcoming environment for us, and that's why again we feel really comfortable with that location in Beacon.
I would also like to add something, and I'm not sure if the IDA is aware of this or not, but on our project next door that we just constructed, we currently, or we did have 12 residential units that we were allowed by right to build per our site plan, that's right next to the old DPW site. What we decided to do was to forego that. The RFP came out from the city and had the opportunity to provide this commercial space. We went ahead and again decided to forego those 12 units and all together. We could have built them tomorrow. And in other words, is what I want to point out. And we declined doing that to take on this project to provide the commercial space that the city was crying out for. So we went ahead and left those 12 out and are doing the 20,000 square feet with only 8 residential units instead of 12 units. I just wanted to point that out.
Sarah, we normally would be, as board members, we would normally be asked to, at some point, complete the area of the of our documents. We are approving this, and why, which areas of our focus does this address? Could you perhaps go to that section of our documents and talk with the board about which ones of those areas you feel most apply to this project?
Sure. So I am just going through the cost benefit analysis. So in the project evaluation, the criteria that the board considers when approving projects is A, if it's consistent with our mission and our the agency's mission is to promote economic development resulting in permanent jobs, as well as increasing the ratables, which this project will do by bringing 87, potentially 87 new jobs to Dutchess County, as well as building on a formerly tax exempt property and eventually bring it, bringing it back onto the tax rolls. The additional criteria that the board is asked to also consider is, does the but-for meet, does this meet the but-for requirement that we require? So those are helps fund, helps close a funding gap, is competitive to offers from other states, helps a local company remain the business competitive, is a key industrial cluster critical to the county's economy, including manufacturing, healthcare, information technology, education, tourism, energy, and agribusiness, is an essential service or business generally lacking in the county, meets a local development or community goal, and improves or expands to a municipality's infrastructure. So also we didn't speak about, and Tina, if you want to talk a little bit more about it, but this also project also includes replacing old pipes and infrastructure in the city of Beacon, as well as, again, creating more open space in the city.
Yes, correct. So a significant amount of infrastructure already currently runs underneath this property, and we are updating and building all new infrastructure underneath and providing that to the city at our own cost.
Thank you. Talk a little bit, somebody, about why you need what the cost differential would be to this project. You know, why would it not work without these pilots?
Well, at the end of the day, what we're constructing and everything else, and then the taxes on the property are estimated to be about $210,000. With the rental income projections that we're getting on also taking in the projected expenses, if you see on the pro forma that I did a 4% increase on expenses every year and a 3% increase on the income. But we do not have a increase in rent for 10 years with DocuWare. That was one of the other things that we kept the rent at that for 10 years. So when you start to look at the numbers and you start putting it together, you can see that without these programs, it's just not feasible.
And then again, this is a question for the board. The part of our mission, of course, is to either bring jobs or preserve jobs. And Don did qualify, you know, with the situation with this entity coming in from another county, you know, the board would need to be satisfied that, as was mentioned, either the possibility of losing the project to another state, which is a reason that we could make an exception to our normal rules about, you know, we're not trying to generally take jobs from another county. That's not our mission. And Don, if you could just once again talk about the second exception, I would appreciate that. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Don, you're on mute.
I got it. Just basically to make it, keep them competitive within their industry. So they need this. So presumably what happens here by giving these benefits, those benefits help the applicant to provide a rent that is appropriate for this particular project, and so they can then keep them competitive, and also for their employment, being able to use the rail lines as something to attract part of the recruitment of getting qualified people to run the business. So I think those are the bases that I've heard for them using it as their reason for their needing to do this to remain competitive within their industry.
All right, so.
And so Tim, I just want to reiterate that if we cannot, do this beacon deal, we would definitely look for alternatives again, which are connected to the train. This is for us a given because we know we have a 20 to 30 year time frame when we look at these decisions that again, the workforce of the future will not have individual cars. And so we understand completely that we need to be in locations which are reachable in different ways. And currently that's train, and that's why we would always look for another location which would have this connection.
Okay. So, Sarah, talk about what you are looking for, or I should say, I guess, first of all, talk about if we give this project preliminary approval, what would be the next steps?
So yeah, so they are here this morning for their preliminary approval. The preliminary approval for this project would just authorize a public hearing. So once the public hearing would occur, they would reappear in front of this board again for their final approval. And then it is at the final approval that we can then grant these incentives.
Okay, but that being said, then if people still have objections to this project that are not going to be resolved by a public hearing and time between, I would really like to get those out here so that we make sure that we give the applicant every opportunity to answer those. I don't want to give anybody false hope by doing a preliminary approval if somebody really strenuously still objects. If it doesn't have a chance of being considered for final approval based on some answers to some things. So again, I would encourage any board members at this time, if you have some still outstanding issues that have not been answered, I would ask if you could just let us know what those are before we move forward to asking if there's a motion to tentatively preliminary approval. Is there any other concerns out there still?
Oh, one thing, Tim, is that there, sorry, Mark, is that there is, again, more opportunity for the board at, before the final approval is given as well. So if questions develop as well, this is not the only opportunity.
Understood.
But.
Yes, I just want to make sure that we give the applicant as much opportunity to answer any concerns that we have that can be answered, because I don't want to, I don't want to go ahead with preliminary approval and then turn around and without any new information coming forward, it's rejected at the final. I just want to, again, we're in unusual circumstances. I just want to give everybody an opportunity. If they still have some concerns that have been unanswered, I would just like to give them the opportunity to let us know, let the applicant know what those are.
It would be great. Yeah.
Mark?
I would like to say this. We have another example of a fine transit-oriented development project just north of Poughkeepsie at the old psychiatric facility. And, this is the wave of the future, looking toward siting businesses and jobs close to transit centers. So from that point of view, I'm in favor of it. I also think that one of the benefits that's not often spoken about is the benefit of improving the infrastructure that the municipality relies on, the water and sewer, for example, and roads to some extent. And that should have the effect of lowering the overall cost to the community and as opposed to putting new facilities in remote places which simply, at best case, don't have a lowering effect, but may in fact cost more. Second point, that these are, without doubt, high-tech jobs with a higher rate of pay. So completely appropriate for this part of the world. So as I see the information in front of me right now, I'd be in favor of this project.
The one aspect of it to me that was a bit of a concern this is Tim Dean speaking, was the issue of poaching jobs from another county. I am generally, or I should say, I'm not in favor of that as a general rule. However, I do feel comfortable after hearing the explanations. I am familiar with Orange County enough to know that their ability to address commuter rail is limited right now, and I can see why Beacon, is a spot for them. I can see why they were unable to find that in Orange County. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, what I'm going to ask for is if anybody is willing to put forth a motion for preliminary approval of this project.
Excuse me, if I could chime in for one moment. I appreciate everybody's time on this. I'm the owner, Rodney Weber, and I want to thank you, everybody, for your time. You haven't heard from me yet. I've been patiently listening and waiting because, of course, Tina's been heading this project for me. And again, I appreciate everybody speaking on this behalf. Obviously, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. There's been, obviously, as being involved in Beacon and Dutchess, or the Hudson Valley, we're always, and I've been stressing this for the last 7 years that I've lived here, that economic development is one of the most important aspects of Beacon and of the whole Hudson Valley. And that's been one of my speeches, and continues to be my speeches going forward. And when trying to get planning approval and as such in Beacon. And Tina was correct in saying that originally we were approved only for residential here on this property, and we were approved for more residential. And I took it upon myself to try and push that limit with the city of Beacon to try and expand this actual project, making it bigger so that we could indeed push the limits as far as economic development and acquiring and attracting. We're trying to attract commercial. And by doing so, of course, we're trying to create a Class A building, which would be one of its first of its types in the southern part. I can't speak everything about the northern part of the Hudson Valley, but I do believe that going forward, if we can attract these types of commercial developments, and it only has to start with one, that a lot more could and will follow, and that is our goal. The walls of the building are set, and so is the commercial space. The only thing that is not completed is our residential layout. We feel that at this juncture, it is more important than ever, especially with the current economic climate, that this project is important. With our commercial, we are considering the need of our commercial clients. This would include, the residential as well, trying to create what we need, what DocuWare would need for executives and certain employees also to live in Beacon. This, of course, being another attractor to keep this particular person or this company in New York, which we really do need. At least in my opinion, and I believe it's the opinion of everybody on the board. There's also a large difference between commercial tax and residential tax. And, the bigger we get, the more expensive the project. And of course, trying to push the environmental standards of projects, trying to go for a silver LEED or a gold LEED equivalent, obviously this becomes more and more expensive. People have been seeing that we do that in our already push those limits in our residential projects, but there are no incentives to do that from the government for commercial. They don't give us anything per unit as far as pushing those particular standards in those programs. And again, even before this, you know, we were trying to push the standards as far as infrastructure. We understand infrastructure is important. So there is a 2-foot sewer main that is on this property. And we right away, you know, try to push that limit too and work with the city to say, okay, if we do this, we'll also be able to try and push to up the standards where we are in need in the city as well as the whole Hudson Valley as far as infrastructure is concerned. So we're definitely doing our best, ladies and gentlemen, and I do appreciate your time and this consideration going forward. And if there was any other questions that I can try and answer, I would be more than willing to do so in the near future whenever those may arrive. Again, thank you very much for your time, and I think we're all pushing towards the same goals. And yeah.
Okay. At this point, I would like to once again ask if there is anyone that's willing to put forth a motion for this preliminary approval.
I'd like to make that motion. This is Mark Doyle. Make a motion for preliminary approval of the project as stated.
Is there anybody willing to make a second on that?
Jamie Pacone will be willing to make a second.
Thank you. Sarah, I would like to ask you to take a roll call vote on the project.
Sure. So Kathy Bauer,
Aye.
Tim Dean,
Yes.
Mark Doyle,
Yes.
Stacy Langenthal,
Aye.
Jamie Pacone,
Aye.
Don Sagliano,
Yes.
Al Torgiani.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the project has received preliminary approval. The public hearing and all other processes will move forward, and we will continue to monitor that, and we look forward to having you back for consideration of final approval.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Tim, can you just update us? When would that be, the final?
Sarah?
Can you just tell us when the final public hearing will be?
Sure, yeah. So we will now, I'll have to preface this that we are under unusual times, and scheduling may be a challenge because New York State is changing all these laws about how public meetings are being held under the current crisis.
Right.
So, but typically we can schedule a public hearing within 3 weeks of this meeting, and then we have our next scheduled board meeting is in April, the second Wednesday in April. So if we are able to have a public hearing before then and all questions, any outstanding questions there may be from the board can be answered before the April meeting, then you will appear in front of the April meeting for the final approval. So that's what I'll say for now. But again, you know, we are under our usual times right now, and, you know, we'll do our best to schedule it and try to expedite, you know, or move things smoothly through the process.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Great.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is the Paris report. Is that correct, Sarah?
Yes. So let me just get my papers organized. So.
Excuse me, Tim.
Go ahead.
Yes.
This is Don Sagliano.
Yes, Don.
I just would like to thank Al Torgiani, who was able to pull up those questions. I was having some technical difficulties here. So thank you, Al.
Thank you, Al. Absolutely. I'm glad that we were able to ask them now so that we could, you know, keep the project moving along if appropriate. Okay, Sarah, back to Paris.
Yes, so we have our Paris reports, which is due to the ABO in a few days. So what you were sent was our annual report, the procurement report, and the investment report. Much of the information in these Paris reports align with our audit. So with that, you've had a few weeks to go through this. I just want to ask if there's any questions about the Paris report.
It's a pretty extensive document. I hope everybody had a chance to go through it.
One thing I did want to state again, and I know I said it in my, I've said it before, is the certified financial audit. Because of the system limitations, it basically we have to upload our audit, but because the audit was not approved by the board until this meeting, that's what the handwritten notes on that audit report are for. So,
does anybody have any questions about the Paris reports? Sarah, I would expect you're looking for a motion to approve the Paris report. Is that true?
Yes, please.
Okay. If there is no other questions, can I get a motion from somebody to approve the Paris reports?
Don Sagliano, make the motion to approve the Paris reports.
Thank you, Don.
Al
Second?
Gianni will second that motion.
Thank you, Al. And so then can I get a roll call vote?
Yes. Kathy Bauer,
Aye.
Tim Dean,
Yes.
Mark Doyle. Mark?
He's on mute.
Oh, you're still on mute, Mark.
Right, there you are. Yes.
Stacy Langenthal,
Aye.
Jamie Picone,
Yes.
Don Sagliano,
Yes.
Al Torgiani.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we can adjourn the meeting, the IDA, and so I would like to do that. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second, Mark Doyle.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm going to ask for a voice vote on adjournment. I'm not going to ask for a roll call vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Okay.